Okay, so we're going to take our second pass on the drawing, a little bit of cleanup. Just a reminder that this is the template that was created, and the dimensions, the center marks, the tables are all coming in per standard on the layer that we created, so that it would go up and read in the options the document properties that are part of this standard. So looking at this, I'm going to do a Control X, and we'll see what this looks like back at half scale, and let it adjust. And picking one of those, we'll see the magnetic line. Pull that out a little bit, and still a little crisscross, but it doesn't look terrible. And then there's enough room on sheet 2 that we could put the completed. Went back to 1/5, and no, I do not want a projection since it automatically went into the projection. Maybe we go up to back up to 1/3 for the sheet property. So apply that as a custom. And since it doesn't appear to have changed, so it went from a custom scale to the sheet scale, and we might be able to put a half size in there, so that looks pretty good. So with the balloon callouts on this side, might want to just go into the annotation, make a note. I'm going to place the note away from the drawing view, and we'll do bill of materials, if I can spell materials. Caps lock. Let's just do all uppercase, so I don't have to type that in again. On page 2. Okay, so since that is not, well, hit the escape, since that is not on the view and is on the sheet, if I happen to move this around, that annotation won't travel with it. If it was attached to the view, anytime we move the view, it would move that annotation as well. Okay, so those are looking pretty good. I want to add the slots. So selecting the view, annotation, we'll go into the center mark and for all slots. And we need to pick how that is going to be applied. So to the center or to the arcs. So what are they calling that? Do I get a tooltip? Slot ends. So that looks fine. Go ahead and accept, and it came in on the right layer, so that's good. Take a quick look at sheet 4. We can probably go up to a 1:1, and then we'll just reduce the isometric view to a custom scale of 1/2. And then these guys, let's see what 1:1 looks like. Pretty good. The 140 is probably not gonna fit in there very well, so we'll go to the custom scale on the isometric view, pick that up, and then we can reposition. And pretty decent since it didn't get the slots again. If I don't pick the view first, and we go into annotation and center mark for all slots, then pick the view, it's going to have pretty much the same effect. And we're going to use the default settings. So that's looking pretty good. So I don't know that, so 1/2 would be 50%. We'll take a look at 1:1. That's not too bad. So since this is fitting on an A-size sheet, pretty decent. That whole being accustomed to the scale. and having a perception of how big the assembly is, I was thinking it was a little bit bigger. So same thing, we'll go into the annotations. This time I will go S key and see if it shows up. Center marks for all slots, end, and place. All right, so if I wanted those slots to come in every time, let's try this one real quick, and then we'll do the every time for slots. And since this is on the arc, that shows the center. That looks pretty good. So that one is called arc slot ends, and it gave us a base circle, which is nice. So what I was getting at was in the options, if I wanted it to put all of those slot geometries in, we would go to the, let's see if I can find it, annotations, nope. Looking for the center marks, center lines and center marks, so the one that's right in front of me. So those are the layers where we set, and annotations. Dimensions, center lines. Well, now I know that I've seen all the checkboxes. And when we've exhausted those, there we go, detailing. We can do center marks on the slots, but realistically, they're going to come in center marks slots for the part, but I don't see how they're going to come in. So a lot of times I'd rather just not work with them, deal with them if I'm going to have to go back and make a lot of adjustments. So the holes are pretty straightforward. Fillets, I think that's most cases that's overkill. Those are going to be somewhat typical. And then slots for the assembly, dowel symbols, and dimensions marked for drawing. May go back and turn that one on and see how it does. But we didn't mark any for, and it comes down to that logic that if everything's marked for the drawing, then everything comes in. So we need to come up with our strategy for managing the 3 different lengths and see if we can generate that as a table. And then the bushing. So if I wanted to do the center line, S key and center line, if I select the view, then it will go through the part. And those could go up a little bit in size. I don't want to get too crazy, but I'd like to fill the page up a little bit more. All right, and then just rough positioning for look. So since we're here, let's go ahead and put our smart dimension on the exterior. Oh, and we are in inch, pounds, and seconds, so that'll make it even more interesting. So let's go into the edit document units. Not everything is going to be 3 decimal places for the millimeters, grams, and seconds. I'll probably end up changing that back, and then we'll look at doing a dual dimension. So 3 decimal places on the millimeters is what we have in our details. So if I pull that out, 16.03, and that one did not come out all the way. So that's listed as the document, and it did not go to the primary. So let's go back into the edit document units and dual dimension at 2, but we're still at inches. So let's do millimeters, grams, and seconds. Maybe I didn't apply it. Okay. And that is still listed as the document. So one more time. And since that's, realistically, that's not going to be every dimension, and even every dimension at 2 decimal places. So, as I mentioned earlier, well, and then it kicks it over. All right. Interesting. So to apply the dimension, so what I was looking at is a default. Since we're in inches, we're going to go back to inches and use the standard on our title block for most of these. And if we need to, we will dual dimension for the reference. All right, so I want a limit dimension here. So right now we're at 628, which means that the upper is 0.011, and that gives me the 039. So flying the drawing back in, this is where I'm pulling those numbers from. And the H7 at 6, always have to go back to the chart for those, but we'll see if they're available. And let's see if we have a tolerance modifier. So no, it's not really coming through on the whole. Same as nominal on the document. Well, we'll come back to the S7. Let's get the limits in first, and then we'll come back and see what we can do with those. All right, so tolerance and precision. Still have the limit dimension. So this is the 10 and 0.015, so this is the clearance side. So it can be a little bit bigger. And still an H7S6. And then going to the smart dimensions. Okay, so we're really not going to want to do every one of those. So let's check it real quick. If I go back to inch, pounds, and seconds as our primary, with 3 decimal places, millimeters as 1 decimal place. So that does shift. And so we're out 4/10, so that's pretty precise. And what would we do? Edit document units. And under the annotations, dimensions. And if I turn on the dual dimension display so we can see inches and metric, then the dual dimension is going to be all the way at the bottom, 3 decimal places. That's an awful lot of numbers. Inward rounding split. I kind of like that. I think there's in the settings, we can go back to the dimensions and tell it, do we want it on top, on bottom? So let's go with the bottom. Hit OK. So since that's out that far, realistically we need it out to probably 4 decimal places for it to even have an effect. All right, so not quite half a thousandth that we can deal with there. All right, so we'll go back through 4 decimal places on the inch units. The split values, 3 decimal places on the metric, and then 709 and 18. So again, if we round, 1 millimeter is about 0.039, which means it's about 40 thousandths. So if I divide by 10, 0.1 is 4 thousandths, 0.01 is 4/10 of a thousandth. So we're out pretty far to be dealing with three decimals on a metric number. All right, so smart dimension. Let's try one here real quick, since we're going through. And I would like to set a favorite for this drawing. So add or update a style, and apply the attributes to the selected dimensions. So if I add or update a style, this is going to be my inch, maybe 4 place, and millimeter 3 place. I don't know, something to kind of denote those. And then it should show up in the list, so that when I come over to this one and I pick it, except for the split, that's pretty good. And I'll bring that over where it's a little more readable. Smart dimension and the overall length. And that looks okay. I think the split on the diameter is probably a little helpful. So really, it's right now we're at the 50 millimeter, and I'll need to determine the notes for that. All right, so this guy, since there's not really a square datum to pull from, we could stay pretty close to their dimensioning scheme. I'll fly that back in. See if we can find it here, which was pretty much between centers and lengths. So since the pivot is there, I'm kind of tempted to make that the datum, that center bore on this piece, and just pull all those dimensions from a single location. All right, so chain dimensions are always a challenge to. Well, you don't want me doing math, as I've proved many times before. If I can go to these direct numbers, we're probably going to be a lot better off. And then have reference dimensions. That one's going to be far enough away. Kind of line those guys up. I can have reference dimensions. Zoom up so I make sure I'm picking correct. And with our little pop-up, that parentheses is right there for reference, and that'll help a little bit with inspection, but really the machining manufacturing, I'm going to do better with those numbers. And realistically, let's see, because I went to the center marks, I'm not going to get the overall. So another reference dimension I would like to have is smart dimension. Hold down the shift, go from arc to arc, and the overall dimension goes to the 156. So I can do this math pretty easily, and the overall really isn't too much more generating, but our drawing's already getting kind of busy, so go ahead and pull the thickness, 7 millimeters. We'll drop in our 8 millimeters, and realistically, get the box back. We can go 3 times for the 8 millimeters, and let's see where's going to be a good place that I'm not going to overrun too much stuff. Well, that's what I mean by it getting kind of busy. So we'll place it, and then we'll see if we can work with the leader. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think the latest standards are they're trying to move away from the typical denotation, TYP. Don't know if it's really going to hurt anything if it shows up. The leader, let's see if we go from that to that. No, not really. And if we were to so if it's going to go that way, I think I'd rather just have it do that. All right, so again, it gets kind of busy, but on our third pass, we'll go through and find the tolerances, which reminds me we need one more. And since that one's important, I want to put it in a prominent location. Pick my favorites so I don't have to go through each of those. I keep calling it a favorite, but it's pick its style. We'll place that one. All right, that one's pretty much going to be the same, so let's jump over to this one. With the center lines, we don't really have to go for the angle to the vertex, which was easy enough on our geometry. I think we do need a radius that already got picked. And again, rather than assuming that those are 2 times, because once I start optimizing, I suspect, or maybe I hope, that these geometries will change a little bit. Okay, and then back to the style and the split. Okay, so the outside, and then the thickness. Oh, and then the rapid dimensioning is the inside-outside pick. So on that one, I don't really want it to go all the way across. Let's go back to the leaders so that I can tell it that I just want to feed that first. And still not picking that center line, so our center arc. So I would be okay with giving it that. And those numbers are looking pretty clean, so inside going to help denote it a little bit better without having the lines all the way across the diameter. All right. So we can open up, still in the dimensions, so right click and select, get that out of the way. That over. Oh, we didn't get the 30 millimeter. See if we can find a spot for that to where it's not. And sometimes they're just going to get busy, but the whole thing, crossing dimensions, crossing extension lines and dimensions, we'll try to minimize that as much as possible. Okay, so not too bad. I said we didn't do a side view. I definitely need the top view, and I'm thinking this is probably going to get a little busy too. So anytime that we have this many dimensions, we're probably going to want to think about doing the ordinate. So if I place that as my 0, go to the first, the second, the third. If we go to centers, I'll probably put virtual sharps in there to clean that up. And that's if we really think that we need to put all of these in one shot. So let's see, we'll go back to the ordinate. I think it's easier to just, sometimes I remember the horizontal and the verticals, and other times I don't. So since the side view actually has the 6 millimeter designation and the height, I don't really want to include that because it's in the ordinate for the vertical because it's not really something that's very usable. I'll try and fit that in. And when it gets really crowded like this, I think I'm probably just better off going back into the dimensions, picking up a new ordinate. It's coming off of the same location, but it's giving me a little bit more flexibility, or, well, not as crazy to pick from. So going to the top, I hold down the shift, and very quickly I'm getting a lot of dimensions in here. So I don't know, might want a second page to do that interior and let that that clean itself up. But once I start the ordinate dimension, I kind of carry it through as far as I can. And things like the reference dimensions, those could show up. And it really isn't helping that I am that I have picked the dual dimension on this case. So let's go find a spot that's not too crowded there, and back to the parentheses. We go from spot to spot. Yeah, that's just going to be right there on the edge. So we'll see if we can clean that up. All right, and the reason I'm putting the parentheses reference dimensions on these is because technically I want the ordinate dimensions to have priority. And we'll go back click and select. All right, so yeah, that got really busy really quick, and I don't even have all my dimensions in. So something like that one, and realistically that one. I can pull those out. That one's going to be useful. That one's going to be useful for the overall. We've got our locations, our positional locations. And then I think this one we will end up with the 2 times. And we will need to apply our style. And we'll go down and split. All right, so this one became Art Deco craziness pretty quick, and I still did not get the one dimension that I need off of the side. So it was missing, and it doesn't really show as a fillet in either of these views. So, well, let's just go S key, and I need to pick up the views, projected view, and we'll see if we can slide it in there. It's kind of crazy that I only need to need this view. No, I don't want to keep projecting, so escape. And then smart dimension. I really only need this view for the 6 millimeters in that that corner radius. All right, so yeah, it's all getting a little crowded. All right, so I'm sure there's some ways that we could clean this up. And let's go ahead and bring that one down. Try to slide that in there. Oof. There's just not a lot of room to manipulate here. So all right, so I don't really want to, let's go ahead, and since we're going to deal with those as their own, that will help with that geometry. And maybe I can raise that up just a little bit. And the jog lines, leader lines are right there. All right, so that's fairly clear. With the geometry, I don't really want to lose too much, so let's go ahead and we'll add a sheet. Also add a sheet 9. Let's go to its properties, and I'm going to rename this to 3B. And if I drag that back, then I could realistically, just to make my naming consistent, that I did this on purpose, that it wasn't one of my haphazard choices. We need to go back in. Okay, so that's not where I want it. I really want the housing, so I'm getting in the habit of clicking once and then going back and clicking. Takes me into the front view. That's really all I should need. All right, and we can label this one as detail for the interior. And 1-to-1 got really big really fast, so I think we'll stay at the half. Again, with the annotations and setting a note, I want to make sure it's not attached. Interior detail of housing, something along those lines. And need to spell check. Okay, so with that in place, now I can add let's see, let's go smart dimension there first. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if I pick on that, go to the little box, 8 times. I guess it would help to not hold the shift down for that. And then we want to deal with the virtual sharps. So we'll see. I'm trying to escape. Let's see if I added that to the S key. So this would be something else that I think would be useful on the S key, is to do a virtual sharp. We go in and we pick points, but points don't get used all that much. So if I place it and then rearrange it, I really want it over here. Okay, so the intent for the virtual sharp is to select and control select a line, hit the S key, and place the point. That gives me the virtual sharp. And we switched out of per standard, so I'm not sure when that happened. Oh, and since it's on per standard, okay, so that's what's it's cycling through, much like it goes to the property manager when it needs to go to the property manager. So that being the case, let's see what we can do with the virtual sharps. All right, and this one's getting quite long, so virtual sharps do not have a layer, at least not at this point. So we'll see if drafting standard, virtual sharps, and system options sketch. Nope. So interesting that there is not a detail for those. All right, so Shift S sharp. And let's see, do I really need one there? Probably not. That one being vertical and side. So I think that one would be useful. So apparently that's just going, well, it's showing up as blue. From there and there, S to sharp. And actually that one's radius as well, typically the outside, so figure out what I want here. Okay, so that gives me something to dimension the heights to. And we're going to locate this thing. Oh, let's, do I want to stay with the ordinance? Yeah, let's be consistent with the ordinance. Okay, the 0, and then intersection, the intersection, and then that will come over to that side. And select and more dimensions, go back into the ordinate. We need to position it. And to the sharp. So that one actually needs 1. Let's see, I need to, since I missed that, I'm not going to go over to that side. I'm just going to bring it all the way across, which is a little bit of a stretch. And then select, and if I didn't add that virtual sharp, I would come back to the sketch and pick the point from there. All right, and then add ordinate. All right, so this second pass got a little bit long. There's a lot of information here to be able to go through and manage. But overall, we've got a good second pass.